You are listening to Viewpoints from PlaceCloud. Cultural researchers tell stories of places from around the world. For the full multimedia experience and to support the creators you enjoy, visit placecloud.io.
We stand now in Coleman Street, so named after the charcoal burners who used to live there in the Middle Ages. St Stephen's Church, also called St Stephen's in the Jewry, was a church at the corner of Coleman Street and what is now Gresham Street. This was first mentioned back in the 12th century. From its situation in the quarter of London inhabited by many Jewish people, in the 1580s John Stowe believed incorrectly that the building had once been used as a synagogue. Stowe described the street as a fair and large one, with diverse fair houses with smaller tenements. It was in the civil wars of the mid-17th century that Coleman Street is perhaps most famous. St Stephen's parish had long been associated with troublemaking. It had been noted for disorders in 1617, 1636 and 1642, and after the Reformation in the 16th century, St Stephen's parishioners had gained the unusual right of being able to elect their vicar. From at least the 1630s, there were people who radically believed in separated from the established Church of England, which they saw as less reformed than it ought to have been. Separatism at this time was illegal. In the years before the outbreak of war between King and Parliament, the street had been home to many religious and political firebrands, often of a separatist nature. With the outbreak of civil war in the 1640s, the street became a hotbed of radical ideas during a period when the world was turned upside down. In 1641, the street was the centre of radical Puritanism in the city, perhaps in the whole of the country, and it contained the house of Radical MP and future Mayor of London, Isaac Pennington. When King Charles I went to the House of Commons to arrest the 5 members who had been most troublesome thorns in his side, it was to St Stephen's Ward, Coleman Street, to which they fled, possibly to the house of Pennington. The botched attempt by Charles to arrest some of his critics led to a series of events which eventually led to the outbreak of civil war the following year. During the civil wars, a deluge of ideas emerged espousing what was best for England and her people, with fierce arguments over what soldiers were fighting and dying for. Anything felt possible as new waves of print information broke through censorship, and absolute monarchy gave way eventually to a form of republic. The passionate minority believed they were owed for the sacrifices made and for the innumerable dead and injured. Some felt they'd earned a better world, usually one which involved new freedoms to think, say and do. Many had the powerful certainty that Parliament's victory was a sign of divine favour from God. Others simply had lost faith in the previously unassailable institutions of church and state to protect their bodies and souls. And this was understandable given that so much had crumbled or been torn down. Many of the old certainties were no longer certain. During the war, Coleman Street only increased its radical activity. Thomas Lamb was a soap boiler and leader of an early Baptist church, that is, separatist church. He lived in Bell Alley, just off Coleman Street. Lamb would join the radical political movement, the Levellers, who argued for changes to legal and political systems to make things fairer for freeborn Englishmen. In 1643, Nicholas Chew, who lived at Coleman Street, was arrested for holding assemblies in his house and admitted to being a separatist. The street also had John Goodwin's church and Samuel Howe's preaching place at the Nag's Head, as well as many of what we would call tub preachers without fixed abode who would preach to anyone who would care to listen. The secret printing press at Coleman Street reproduced an old John Lilburn tract. Lilburn was one of the leaders and one of the most prolific writers of the Levellers. Chew later admitted to printing Lilburn's text, and that another Leveller, Richard Overton, had run the press in his house, which was nearby to Coleman Street. The same press also produced at least one other work by a Leveller leader, William Walwyn. Coleman Street continued to attract radicals even after the wars. John Gardner, a soldier and religious radical, was cashiered out of the army in 1654, and by 1656 he was in Swan Alley off Coleman Street as a preacher. No, you wouldn't know it today. For many years, this little alley was one of the most radical places in England.